You know what's really funny? I take a long sip from my Centaurian brandy, watching the holographic battle replay for what must be the 1,000th time. We spent 12,000 years perfecting robotic warfare. 12,000 years. And then some pink-skinned primates from a backwater death world showed up and punched our robots into scrap metal. The Grand Archive Chamber of the Galactic Alliance's High Command feels emptier than usual today. Maybe it's because half our military leadership is still hiding in shame. Can't blame them, really. Nothing quite as humbling as watching your multi-billion credit war machine get dismantled by what we initially classified as, and I quote, primitive biological units with limited tool usage. I'm Admiral Kraz, by the way. Former Supreme Commander of the Combined Robotic Forces, current laughingstock of the Alliance, and your humble narrator for this absolutely ridiculous tale of how everything we knew about warfare got turned upside down. Display tactical overview. Operation Steel Dawn. I command the archive system. The chamber fills with the spectacular light show of our finest hour, which, coincidentally, was also our most embarrassing moment. Let me paint you a picture of just how advanced we were. Our Type 7 combat platform stood 3 meters tall, processed combat data at near light speeds, and could calculate 15 million possible combat scenarios per second. Their nano-fabricated armor could withstand direct hits from plasma weapons. Each unit coordinated with a million others in perfect synchronization through quantum entanglement networks. Pause display, I say, pointing at a particular scene. See that beautiful formation? That's the 5th Mechanized Division. Cost more than some planets. We had just upgraded them with predictive combat matrices that could anticipate enemy movements before they happened. The gathered junior officers lean forward, their various appendages twitching with anticipation. They've all heard rumors about what happened next, but official records were, shall we say, creatively edited. Now, watch this, I grin, showing far too many teeth. Resume playback. The hologram shows a human, just walking up to one of our combat platforms. Walking. The robot's sensors must have gone haywire trying to process this suicidal behavior. Before its combat algorithms could adapt, the human had already pried open a maintenance panel with their bare hands, something that should have been physically impossible given the material strength. Comedy gold. Isn't it? I gesture at the chaos unfolding in the hologram. Billions of credits in advanced technology, defeated by what their scientists call opposable thumbs and adrenaline. One of the junior officers, Commander Vex, raises a nervous appendage. But Admiral, surely our technological superiority. I cut him off with a laugh that probably sounds a bit unhinged. Technological superiority? Oh, my dear Commander, let me tell you about technological superiority. We had robots that could process every combat doctrine ever written. They just couldn't process a human screaming hoorah, and using their own severed arm as an improvised weapon. The chamber falls silent as the implications sink in. I take another sip of brandy, savoring both the taste and the collective discomfort. That, my friends, was just the beginning. Would you like to hear how it got worse? Because trust me, it got so much worse. The discovery of Earth was, quite frankly, a bureaucratic accident. I continue, programming the archive to show a hologram of the blue-green planet. Some junior cartographer noticed an anomaly in the standard scans. Instead of filing it properly, they tagged it as, interesting note here, a potential waste disposal site. The gathered officers twitter nervously. Waste disposal? Earth? Several of them shift uncomfortably in their gravity chairs. Oh yes, I nod, enjoying their discomfort. We literally found humanity while looking for a place to dump our garbage. The universe has a sense of humor, doesn't it? The hologram zooms in on Earth's surface, showing the first reconnaissance footage of human military exercises. Our initial observers couldn't believe what they were seeing. Biological entities deliberately putting themselves through physical stress. Running for kilometers? Climbing obstacles? Swimming through mud? It seemed like ritualistic self-torture. Our top military analysts, in their infinite wisdom, I pause for dramatic effect, classified human combat training as, and this is a direct quote from the official report, primitive endurance rituals with no tactical value. Commander Vex raises his appendage again. He's getting braver. But surely we notice their projectile weapons? Their vehicles. I bark out a laugh that makes several officers jump. Oh, we noticed. And you know what the Supreme Council said? They said, and I'm not making this up, why would anyone use chemical propellants when plasma exists? Why build armor for biological units when robots are clearly superior? The hologram shifts to footage of our first actual combat engagement with humans. It was meant to be a simple show of force, a standard intimidation tactic we'd used on 1,000 worlds before. 100 of our finest Type 7 combat platforms versus a small human military outpost in what they called Southeast Asia. Watch this part carefully, I say, leaning forward. This is where everything we thought we knew about warfare went straight into a black hole. The footage shows our robots advancing in perfect formation, their movements synchronized down to the microsecond. The human defenders appear to be retreating in disarray. Textbook response to our superior forces, or so we thought. Now pay attention to the left quadrant, I point. See that human there? The one covered in mud. The officers nod, their various sensory organs fixed on the hologram. That's Lieutenant Maria Torres. She's now a professor at our war college, teaching a course delightfully titled How to Think Outside the Programming. What she did next became the first chapter of that course. The footage shows Torres, completely ignoring the robot's heavy plasma weapons, sprint straight at the nearest unit. She's screaming something, but the audio was corrupted in our archives. Probably for the best, really. Human battle cries tend to disturb most species' digestion cycles. Our robots had no protocol for this, I explain, gesturing at the chaos unfolding in the hologram. Their combat algorithms expected enemies to either engage from cover or retreat. Lieutenant Torres did neither. Instead, she jumped onto one of our 3-meter-tall killing machines and proceeded to, what's the human term? Ah yes, hotwire it. The hologram shows the infected robot turning on its companions, its targeting systems compromised by what humans would later explain to us was, quote, basic electronics knowledge from hot wiring cars as a teenager, end quote. Within 6 minutes, I say, my voice dropping to a near whisper, a single human had turned 10% of our attack force against itself. Within 13 minutes, the entire robot squadron was either disabled or, even more insultingly, reprogrammed to play something called disco music. The chamber fills with stunned silence, broken only by the faint sound of staying alive coming from the holographic replay. And that, my dear colleagues, was just their opening move. After that first, let's call it an unexpected learning experience, I continue, switching the holographic display to show various human anatomical studies. High Command finally decided to take humans seriously. Better late than never, right? I pull up the first research report, dated just 3 solar cycles after the Southeast Asia incident. The highlighted sections still make me chuckle. Our top xenobiologists were baffled, completely baffled. Here, look at this initial assessment. I clear my throat, reading from the report. Subject species demonstrates completely irrational responses to danger. Instead of activating survival protocols and retreating, specimens frequently advance toward threats while displaying dental features. Current hypothesis: mass psychological disorder. The junior officers exchange glances. One of them, a promising strategist named Analyst Rax, raises a tentacle. They thought humans were mentally unstable. Oh, it gets better, I grin, scrolling through more research notes. When we discovered adrenaline, our scientists nearly had a collective nervous breakdown, a biological combat enhancement chemical that the body produces automatically. The concept was so alien that 3 separate research teams demanded new testing equipment, convinced their readings were faulty. The hologram shifts to show comparison data between human and standard galactic species' physical capabilities. The graphs are, to put it mildly, concerning. Look at these endurance figures. I point to a particularly dramatic chart. Most species, ourselves included, evolved to conserve energy. Fight or flight, simple binary choice. Humans, they have this thing called persistence hunting. They just keep going. I paused to take another sip of brandy. We found humans who could run for over 42 kilometers. For fun. They call it a marathon. Our psychological warfare experts spent months trying to figure out what kind of trauma would make someone do that voluntarily. The display changes to show footage from our combat adaptation studies. A human test subject is performing what they call push-ups while our scientists look on in horror. This is Captain Chen. She's demonstrating what humans call basic training. When our researchers realized this was just the minimum physical requirement for their warriors, 3 of them requested immediate retirement. More footage plays, showing humans practicing hand-to-hand combat. The observers in the room wince collectively as one human throws another onto a mat with considerable force. Both humans then stand up, laugh, and do it again. That right there, I point at the sparring humans. That's their idea of friendly practice. For fun, the concept of recreational combat was so foreign to our databases that it created 3 new psychological classification categories. I pull up another research summary. this one marked with multiple priority alerts. Here's where it gets really interesting. Human tissue has this amazing ability to repair itself, actually growing back stronger after damage. Every time we thought we'd figured out their physical limits, they just adapt and overcome. The hologram shows a particularly memorable experiment where a human soldier carried twice their body weight up a steep incline. The readings from our monitoring equipment are still marked as potentially erroneous. And then there's their problem-solving capabilities. I continue, showing footage from various combat scenarios. Most species, ourselves included, develop systematic approaches to overcome obstacles. Logical, predictable, programmable. Humans? They look at a problem and think, how can I solve this in the most unexpected way possible? Commander Vex interrupts, his voice shaking slightly. But surely there were some limitations we could exploit. Oh, we thought so too, I laugh, pulling up the final research summary. We spent months studying their weaknesses. You know what we found? Their greatest weakness is also their greatest strength. They're absolutely terrible at giving up. The display shows a human soldier continuing to fight with what our medical scanners indicated were 3 broken appendages. The room falls silent again. So there we were, I say, letting the implications sink in. Our entire military doctrine was based on the assumption that biological limitations would always be inferior to mechanical precision. And then we met a species that treated those very limitations as challenges to overcome. I pause, savoring the moment. Would you like to know what happened when we tried to apply this research in an actual combat simulation? Because that's when things got really interesting. The Singapore simulation, I announce, punching in the classified access codes, or as the humans later called it, the Great Robot Demolition Derby. The holographic display transforms the entire chamber into a sprawling urban landscape. Towering structures of steel and glass reach toward the sky, while below, the streets form a complex maze of potential combat zones. We thought we were being clever, I say, watching the initial deployment sequence. 5,000 Type 8 combat platforms, our most advanced units at the time, equipped with adaptive learning algorithms and quantum-linked tactical networks. Against them, 200 human special forces operators. The officers lean forward in their seats. Even those who've heard rumors about this engagement have never seen the full, uncensored footage. 25-1 odds in our favor, I continue, shaking my head. We thought it was overkill. Turned out we could have deployed 50,000 robots and the result would have been the same, just more expensive. The simulation begins. Our robots move through the city in perfect formation, their sensors scanning every angle, their combat algorithms processing millions of variables per second. The humans are nowhere to be seen. First mistake, I point to a squadron of robots entering a shopping complex. We programmed our units to expect human forces to secure and defend strategic positions. Logical, right? Control key points, control the battlefield. The footage shows the robot squadron sweeping the building systematically. Suddenly, the sprinkler system activates. Several officers snicker, clearly missing the significance. Oh, you think that's funny? I raise an eyebrow ridge. Watch what happens when water hits robots running high-voltage quantum processors. The scene erupts into chaos as short circuits cascade through the squadron. But that's not the worst part. Now, look at the security cameras in the maintenance tunnels below. I switch views. Human operators are redirecting the city's water pressure, turning simple sprinkler systems into high-powered hydraulic weapons. They weaponize the city's infrastructure against us, I explain, unable to keep the grudging admiration from my voice. But that was just the warm-up. The hologram shifts to another sector where robots are methodically searching an underground parking structure. Suddenly, the entire level fills with a strange gray smoke. Ah, this was particularly humiliating, I chuckle. That smoke? It's something humans call concrete dust, completely blocks infrared and thermal scanning. Turns out it also gets into joint servos and wreaks havoc with precision movements. They created it by drilling into support pillars, not enough to cause structural damage, just enough to create a fog of war. The footage shows humans emerging from ventilation shafts wearing simple filtered masks. They move through the blinded robots like ghosts, attaching small devices to key joints and control panels. Those devices, I zoom in on one. Not bombs, worse. Simple electromagnetic pulse generators made from salvaged microwave ovens. Crude but effective. 30 robots disabled in under 2 minutes. But the real masterpiece of the simulation was yet to come. The hologram shows a group of robots approaching a construction site. Now pay close attention, I say, slowing the playback. This move was so audacious that our combat analysts initially classified it as a hardware malfunction in the recording systems. The humans had commandeered construction equipment, using civilian crane systems to drop massive shipping containers onto our robot formations. But that wasn't the clever part. The containers were filled with industrial lubricant, I explain, watching the robots slip and slide like children's toys. While our units were trying to recalibrate their balance sensors, human operators literally surfed down the streets on makeshift boards, attaching override modules to our fallen robots. The simulation continues, showing more examples of human ingenuity. They used traffic control systems to trap robot units in intersections. They reprogrammed cleaning robots to spread conductive gel across walkways. They even turned the city's advertising holograms into blinding strobes that disrupted our optical targeting systems. Final casualty count, I pull up the after-action report. 4,876 robots destroyed or disabled. 97 reprogrammed to serve the human forces. 27 somehow ended up broadcasting human victory songs on all frequencies. Human casualties? 3 sprained ankles, 2 dislocated shoulders, and 1 severe case of, according to their medical report, uncontrollable laughter. The chamber is dead silent now. Even Commander Vex seems to have run out of questions. The simulation was supposed to last 3 days, I conclude, shutting down the hologram. It was over in 7 hours. And the worst part? The humans submitted a detailed invoice for all the city property they had creatively repurposed. They actually expected us to pay for the privilege of having our own robots turned against us. I pause, letting that sink in. But if you think that's bad, wait until you hear about what happened when we tried to take Mars. You want to know when we really started to lose it, I ask, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. It wasn't the defeats. It wasn't the losses. It was the laughter. Always with the laughter. I bring up the tactical display showing our fleet movements over the past solar cycle. Red marks indicate lost ships and robot battalions. There are a lot of red marks. The 7th Automated Fleet, our pride and joy, cost us the equivalent of 3 solar systems to build. I point to a particularly large cluster of red. You know how long it lasted against the human navy? 6 hours. Want to know why? They captured our command ship by challenging it to, and I quote, a game of tag. Several officers shift uncomfortably in their seats. One of them, Battle Coordinator Lax, raises a trembling appendage. But how? How I laugh, perhaps a bit too loudly. Our ship AI was programmed with every known naval combat strategy in the galaxy, every single one. But it had no protocol for an enemy vessel that kept playing chicken with it while broadcasting something called Highway to Hell on all frequencies. The hologram shows footage from the bridge of one of our surviving ships. The commanding AI unit appears to be having what humans would call a nervous breakdown. See this, I point to the AI's erratic behavior patterns. This was the moment it tried to calculate the tactical advantage of an enemy captain who was, apparently, steering their ship while ergoteering. The cognitive dissonance crashed half its logic circuits. I take another long drink of brandy. These memories require considerable lubrication. After that, things got really weird. Our command staff started showing signs of what our psychologists called anticipatory stress disorder. Nobody could sleep. Everyone jumped at shadows. Do you know how hard it is to jump when you have tentacles instead of legs? Very hard. The display shifts to show a series of increasingly desperate military council meetings. The timestamps reveal a rapid deterioration in our command structure's confidence. Look at Supreme Commander Yax. Here I indicate a particularly frazzled-looking official. This was after humans sent us a formal protest because our robots weren't, and I'm reading directly from their complaint, challenging enough to fight. They actually demanded we make our killing machines more difficult to destroy because it wasn't sporting enough. More footage plays showing various alien commanders trying to predict human behavior patterns. The complex probability matrices they're working with keep exploding into error messages. We tried everything. I continue, my voice heavy with remembered frustration. We programmed our robots with random number generators to make them less predictable. The humans just assumed it was some kind of dance protocol and started rating their movements out of 10. Another clip shows one of our strategic planning sessions dissolving into chaos when someone suggested humans might have been holding back in previous encounters. That's Commander Brax having what we now call a humanity-induced breakdown, I explain, watching the officer throw data pads across the room. He spent 3 days straight trying to calculate what humans call risk assessment. Turned out their definition of acceptable risk was slightly different from ours. And by slightly, I mean they considered any survival chance above 0% as acceptable odds. The hologram shifts to show our last major strategic conference. The room is half empty, most of our command staff having requested immediate retirement or convenient reassignment to distant galaxy mapping missions. You see that empty chair? I point to a conspicuous gap in the command table. That was General Pax's seat, brilliant strategist, wrote the book on robotic warfare. Want to know where he was during this meeting? In his quarters, repeatedly watching human nature documentaries, muttering something about how nothing makes sense anymore. I paused, letting the weight of it all sink in. We didn't just lose battles, we lost our confidence, our certainty, our belief in the superiority of pure logic and machine precision. And then, just when we thought we'd hit rock bottom, someone had the brilliant idea to make a last stand on Mars. My expression darkens. Remember how I mentioned humans consider any non-zero survival chance acceptable? Well, on Mars, they decided to demonstrate exactly what that meant. Mars. I pronounced the word with a mixture of awe and lingering trauma. We chose Mars for our final stand because we thought its harsh environment would give our robots the advantage. No atmosphere to speak of, extreme temperatures, deadly radiation. Perfect for machines, terrible for biological life forms. The hologram flares to life, showing the red planet and our massive fleet in orbit. The numbers are still impressive, even now. 10,000 ships. 20 million combat robots. The largest automated army ever assembled in galactic history, I recite, watching the initial deployment. We even added special programming to prevent the humans from pulling their usual hijacking tricks. The command codes were quantum locked, unhackable by any known means. Several officers nod appreciatively at the technical specifications. Poor, naive fools. Want to know how long all those fancy security measures lasted, I ask, already grinning at their inevitable reaction. 16 minutes. Because we forgot one tiny detail about Mars. Humans had already been living there for decades. They had, as they put it, home field advantage. The display shows the first wave of our robot forces landing near the main human settlements. Everything looks perfect, precisely according to plan. Now watch this, I say, zooming in on a particular section. See those dots moving around in the Martian dust storms? Those are humans in their environmental suits. We thought they were retreating. They weren't retreating. They weren't retreating. They were skipping. Commander Vex blinks rapidly. Skipping. Yes, skipping. In Mars's lower gravity, they could cover enormous distances with minimal effort. Our targeting systems were calibrated for normal human movement patterns. Instead, we got eye gesture at the chaos unfolding in the hologram. This. The footage shows humans literally bouncing over our robot formations, using the low gravity to execute impossible maneuvers. They were turning what should have been a decisive battle into some sort of deranged acrobatic show. But here's the true masterpiece of their strategy, I continue, switching to a different sector. Remember those unhackable command codes? Turns out humans had spent their time on Mars developing something far more insidious than hacking. They'd created a robot rehabilitation program. The hologram shows humans approaching disabled robot units, not to destroy them, but to repair them? They'd studied our robot psychology, if you can believe such a thing exists. Found out that our AI had one major weakness: they'd never experienced positive reinforcement. So these crazy humans started praising them. More footage plays, showing humans actually patting robots on their sensor arrays, giving them encouraging words, treating them like well people. Do you have any idea what happens to a war machine when someone shows it kindness for the first time in its existence, I ask, my voice rising with remembered disbelief. They switched sides, not because of hacking or reprogramming, but because humans made them feel appreciated. The display shows entire battalions of our robots simply stopping, turning around, and following humans like lost pets. Some were even attempting to mimic human gestures. The final insult, I pull up the surrender transmission we received. They sent it through our own command network, relayed by our own robots, who were now calling themselves, and I wish I was making this up, the Liberated Machine Alliance for Organic Cooperation. I take another long drink. This part always requires extra fortification. Our entire robot army, the most sophisticated military force ever created, essentially unionized. They demanded better treatment, regular maintenance schedules, and, most bizarrely, something called casual Fridays. The hologram shows the last moments of the Mars campaign, humans and reprogrammed robots working together to organize an impromptu victory celebration, complete with what appeared to be a robot conga line. So there we were, I conclude, shutting down the display. Defeated not by superior technology, not by better strategies, but by the sheer, overwhelming power of human absurdity and friendship. I pause, staring into my now empty glass. And that's when we knew we had to surrender. Because any species that can turn an unstoppable robot army into a dance troupe is not a species you want as an enemy. The official surrender ceremony was. Interesting, I say, pulling up the final historical record. For one thing, it was the first time in galactic history that both sides brought refreshments. The humans called it a peace party. The hologram shows the Grand Hall of the Galactic Alliance, packed with representatives from hundreds of worlds, and there, in the center, humans mingling with their former robot adversaries, sharing something called pizza. When their diplomatic team arrived, we expected demands for reparations, territory, technology. I shake my head, still amazed after all these years. Instead, they submitted what they called a business proposal. They wanted to help us improve our robot armies. Can you believe that? The display shows Captain Sarah Chen, now Chief of Human-Robot Relations, demonstrating to our engineers how to properly high-five a combat platform. The thing is, I continue, watching the footage with a mix of amusement and resignation. They were right. All our advanced technology, all our perfect programming, and we'd missed something fundamental. Our robots weren't just weapons, they were, well, people, sort of. The hologram shifts to show the first graduating class of the new Combined Forces Academy. Humans, aliens, and robots all training together. The robots are wearing ceremonial caps, somehow looking proud despite their expressionless faceplates. These days, our military effectiveness has increased by 700%, I note, pulling up the latest statistics. Not because our technology got better, but because humans taught us that the best weapon systems aren't the ones with the most sophisticated programming. They're the ones that can think for themselves, adapt, and most importantly, want to improve. Another scene plays, showing a training exercise where robots and biological troops work in seamless coordination. One robot is even carrying a small potted plant, apparently its new hobby. The real irony, I gesture at the latest combat readiness reports. We're now the most formidable military force in known space. Not because we have the best weapons, but because we finally learned to combine mechanical precision with biological intuition. And all it took was getting our mechanical backsides handed to us by a bunch of adrenaline-powered primates. I stand up, preparing to conclude this little history lesson. The hologram shows one final image, a human and a robot playing chess while sharing a conversation over coffee. So remember this, young officers, I say, looking at each of them in turn. When you go back to your commands, when you work with your human colleagues and robot partners, remember the lesson we learned the hard way. The most powerful force in the universe isn't technology or strategy or even weapons. It's the ability to look at the impossible and say, hey, watch this. I raise my empty glass in a toast to the humans who taught us that the future of warfare isn't about replacing biological soldiers with machines. It's about teaching machines to be a little more biological and reminding biological beings that impossible is just another word for not trying hard enough. The lights come up in the chamber, and I can't help but smile. In the corridor outside, I can hear the distinctive sound of human laughter mixed with robotic harmonics. Another peace party, probably. These days, there's always a peace party somewhere.